Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. All things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. Lots to talk about. A lot of women's basketball to talk about. Of course, the Bulldogs narrowly missing a national championship. The Rebels naming a new coach. So we'll talk about both of those. A lot more. Spring football is wrapping up. Baseball is here, big series between the two rivals this weekend, starting Friday at Dudy Noble Field. Logan, how are you, man?
Road weary. I tell you what, it's been nice to be back home the last couple of days. I feel like I spent more time in a hotel bed the last 3 weeks than I have my own bed. And I know when I woke up Tuesday morning in my own bed, it was just a strange feeling, but a good feeling. And but you and I were in St. Louis together, and feels like I went straight from St. Louis back to Starkville, drove right back to Kansas City, spent a day in Columbia, back to Kansas City, back to Starkville, spent one day in Starkville, and then drove up to Columbus, Ohio.
Well, hey, man, how was Kansas City? Jack Stack Barbecue still doing good things there?
Yeah, I went there one night. It was good. Tyson Lee, former Mississippi State quarterback, recommended for me to get the burn ends there, and I did, and they were really good. And like I said, barbecue's barbecue to me. I'm not really a barbecue snob like a lot of people. If you got a good barbecue sauce, you got good barbecue, in my opinion. But like I said, everything I ate there was really good, and found some good places to eat up in Columbus. Columbus is not really. I couldn't really. Kansas City's known for barbecue. I really didn't know what Columbus was kind of known for, but I hit some places up. There wasn't a whole lot of choices on Easter to find anything to eat. I found a couple of fast food places open, but that was it. But it was good trips, and like I said, I'm definitely not complaining. I enjoyed it. I wished all those trips weren't just compacted on top of each other. If I'd have got a little bit of breathing room in between them, it would have been nice.
Yeah, I start when I get into the Ohio area, I start looking for Skyline Chili. Did you find one of those?
There was one close to my hotel, and I actually was going there on Easter to eat, but they were closed. So but good for them for that. And there was a Steak and Shake right down the road, and I hit it up. They were still up and hopping on Easter.
All right, hopping on Easter. Well, we're still hopping here, folks. A lot of stuff going on. Before we get deeper into the program, I want to remind you of a couple of other podcasts to be on the lookout for. Be sure to check out The Memo, our news podcast, all things Northeast Mississippi, with Chris Kiefer and Emma Crawford Kent. That comes to you every Thursday. Be sure to check out for your high school sports needs. I'm blacking out. Prep Rally. Be sure to check out Prep Rally for everything high school sports there, Logan. Lots going on, man. Lots going on. Got to filter things in and out. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. But Prep Rally, Brad Locke and Dalton Middleton will get you tuned in with everything you need to know for high school sports in Northeast Mississippi. Logan and I are here with you every week, give or take, on a Thursday. Didn't make it last week, Logan. Couldn't get those schedules to work out, but we're back now. Let's talk about that national championship game, Logan. Look, it came down to the final seconds. I'm gonna just tell you, I don't dwell on it a lot and move on because officials are part of the game. I don't like to hear people complain about officiating because there are too many things that an individual team can do during the game to affect the outcome. But it's bothersome when there is such an obvious call that is missed in the final seconds, as was the case for Mississippi State there in the national championship game. Of course, there had been a turnover. It looked like the Bulldogs had gotten a key defensive stop late. Morgan Williams was driving. She was at the middle of the court, and it looked like a linebacker, big girl from Notre Dame, just ran over her. And, of course, the ball came free. Notre Dame got the ball, and eventually Tierra McCowan was called for the foul. But I don't know how you missed that. If you're an official, I don't know how you missed that call.
Yeah, and that was a tough one, too, because, I mean, the fact is Morgan Williams is Mississippi State's all-time leader in free throw percentage, and obviously the game was tied at that point. And if you send her to the line, that's almost an automatic 2 points late in that ball game. But at the same time, Mississippi State blew a 15-point lead. They held Notre Dame to 3 points in the second quarter. We had a 15-point lead midway through the third quarter, and even had a 5-point lead with 1:35 left. So, State didn't play particularly well in that second half, but they still had enough to still finish that game out. You had 1:35 left, and that's when Notre Dame hit their only 2 3-pointers of the entire ball game. They hit one with 1:35 left, and they hit one in that final second. You got to just credit the girl in the final seconds. After the missed call there at midcourt, Tierra McCowan has to foul because Notre Dame come up with that loose ball and threw the ball down court, and they had 2 girls standing right up under the basket, and they were easy layups. So if McCowan doesn't foul there, the ball game's over anyway. So she commits the foul, 3 seconds left. Notre Dame inbounds the ball, and they get the ball to Arike. I cannot pronounce her last name, but she hit the big shot against UConn on Friday night to win that ball game, and she hit another big shot to beat Mississippi State for the national championship. So you just kind of have to take your hats off to that. Vic Schaefer said after the ball game, he's like, I don't know that we could have defended that play any better than we did, other than actually stealing the ball. There was a hand in her face. She was off balance when she made the shot, and it went in. And it's a crushing loss for Mississippi State. You hate it for those 4 seniors that have given so much to Mississippi State's program and kind of put that program on the national map. And you hate for them to go out that way. But at the same time, you got a 15-point lead midway through the third quarter. And Vic Schaefer was, kind of kicking himself after that ball game. He said, it was his responsibility, to get those girls home. He got a 5-point lead with 1:35. It's his job to get them home, and he just didn't get that done. And he was going to have to live with that the rest of his career. And you hate it too. His daughter Blair is on the stage right there beside him at the press conference, and she's sobbing, right there, and he's trying to console her while giving a press conference. And it's a tough situation, but you can't take anything away from those girls and what they've done to put that program on the map. And now it's time to rebuild because those 4 seniors are gone, and Tierra McCowan is the only starter that's left. So they just time to rebuild, and they've got some great recruits coming in. They've got a pretty good players off that bench that are going to have to step into starting roles. So we'll have to kind of see how this team evolves over the next few months and before they get ready to go into next season.
Do you think this is a Sweet 16 team next year?
It could be, and that's kind of where I see it right now is a Sweet 16 team. It really depends on how everybody kind of changes into that role. Does Jasmine Holmes step into that starting role where Morgan Williams left? Chloe Bibby, Jordan Danbury, who played so well in that Final Four, does she step into one of those guard roles? How does these highly touted freshmen that are coming in, how do they fit into everything? How does it's so many different things. Maya Taylor, 3-time Gatorade Player of the Year, who they redshirted this year. How does she fit in, to the mix at point guard? So, there's a lot of question marks, but there's a lot of talent still left on this team. It's just kind of unproven talent.
Ole Miss announced a new women's basketball coach through its social media channels on Wednesday. Her name is Yolette McPhee McEwen. Logan, I hope she shortens that and goes by just one name there as we get into daily operations. Yolette McPhee McEwen. She comes from Jacksonville University, and on paper, Logan, she looks like a good hire. She's described as a passionate and energetic coach by some people that I've spoken with. At the same time, though, you look at her record. I mean, she's young, and she brings that energy. She comes after rebuilding a program at Jacksonville for 5 years. Now, it took her 2 years to get the program on its feet. I think they won maybe 11 games the first year, 12 the second. Then they win 20-plus games for 3 straight years. They make postseason 3 times, make the NCAA tournament only once, because in the Atlantic Sun, you're in one of those one-bid leagues. And if you don't win your conference tournament, you don't win that championship game and get the automatic bid, chances of you getting in at large are very slim. So that's where she was in the Atlantic Sun, made it to the NCAA one time. Her chief rival during that time was Florida Gulf Coast. And, that was, she lost all 3 games to them this year by a combined 17 points. So they were in each game. It was a 2-point game when they played in Jacksonville. But I spoke with Carl Semesco, the Florida Gulf Coast coach. He had great things to say about McEwen, about her drive, her passion, her drive to win, he called it. He described her teams as very physical. So they were very good rebounding teams, very teams that controlled the backboards, as he put it. So interesting to see. One other important note from her background: before she was head coach at Jacksonville, she was an assistant coach at Clemson, a very successful recruiter, energetic recruiter at Clemson. In 2013, she was influential in helping Clemson sign 5 players who were nominated for McDonald's All-American. So 5 McDonald's All-American nominees, a very successful recruiter there as well, and Yolette McEwen. So we will see. She will have a big rebuilding job on her hands at Ole Miss. Obviously, not much success this year under Matt Insell. That's what leads to a coaching change. But, again, with transition, you don't know what the roster is going to look like. Now, the roster from a team that only wins a couple of SEC games is, needs help anyway. So maybe, you don't sweat that transition too much. But I think at least coming back, I haven't seen Medina Muhammad's name mentioned too much among transfer possibilities. Could be, all bets are off in a situation like this when one coach is leaving and others coming. But if she can get Muhammad to stay and Chandrika Sessom to return, from the injury, that's a good starting point with 2 guards in the backcourt. So we'll see, how that works out. But a new coach in place in Oxford. McEwen will be officially introduced tomorrow at the Pavilion. I like the way, Logan, that they did this with Kermit Davis a few weeks ago. The news comes out a couple of days before, and then you set up a formal introduction, and you bring the coach out there and the family, and you have a Q&A, and just kind of bring out some fans. Obviously, there won't be as many as there were for the announcement for Kermit Davis, but there'll be some fans there. I would imagine they'll have the cheerleaders and the band, and they really turned it into a pep rally, and I thought that worked out well. And the other thing they did for us during the Kermit Davis introduction was they allowed the media to go back into the workroom when it was over and have a press conference and ask questions. And, so many times at these things, and I've covered them, and I know you have too, the school tries to sit on the news, and they'll have a press conference where they have a lot of fans in attendance, and you just can't get any work done then. You can't ask good questions. You don't get good responses. So I thought Ole Miss handled this well with the transition to Kermit Davis, and it looks like they'll do the same thing tomorrow. So we'll see if this youthful energy and passion and drive to succeed and all these things equal Ole Miss being able to rebuild to a proud women's basketball history and tradition. Logan, you and I have talked about this before. There was a time when Van Chancellor was coaching at Ole Miss and Jerry Henderson was coaching at Mississippi State. Women's basketball at Mississippi State was not that strong at the time. And I can remember looking down when those teams would play each other and finding that spot on the fact sheet that said series history. And there was a time that the series history was like 50-1 in Ole Miss's favor. And 50-1 between any 2 teams in any sport, any time, is something you don't see very often.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to add too, I forget what's the coach's name at Ole Miss now? The she's got like 4 names.
Yolette McEwen.
Yeah, her. When she was at Jacksonville, she actually got 2 transfers from Mississippi State, a couple of bench players, Kayla Nevitt and LaCara Salter. LaCara Salter, who was known as the Big Ticket here in Starkville. She was a fan favorite, but both of those players transferred out from Mississippi State went down to Jacksonville to finish out their careers, and were able to win there with her as their head coach. So that's a Mississippi State tie in there for you.
Well, that's good. Maybe they'll get back on their feet. Look, youth and energy and passion are good places to start. We'll see how that translates. Look, I mean, this is what you do if you're Ole Miss. You're not going to go out and hire a $2 million coach for women's basketball. That's not what's going to happen. So you roll the dice. You do the best you can. You find someone who's hungry to succeed. These are the things they found in Matt Insel: youth and energy and hunger, and it didn't work out. You hope it works out this time around. At some point in time, maybe they strike gold and they find that coach that helps them rebuild the program. Maybe this is it. We'll see. Time will tell on that. But Matt Insel was unable to win enough to keep his job and to really build the program there. So anyway, that's women's basketball. Transitioning a little bit, Logan, let's talk some spring football. I know you've gotten to see a little bit more as you've been around. And State is continuing in drills. Ole Miss concludes this Saturday with the Grove Bowl. And it'll be the same format as last year. The defense will start out with, I think, 27 points, and the offense will try to catch up. It'll be, ones against ones and twos against twos. And Logan, I just don't get amped up for spring football, but it has exploded in the last, 5 or 10 years, and it's become something that we cover very heavily. And, as Jesus said, football you have with you always. And
Exactly.
that's kind of what the feel you get with spring football. So Ole Miss is about to conclude. One of the biggest things I think the Rebels were able to accomplish in the spring has been to build some depth at running back. Now, we'll see what this translates to on the field, but Matt Luke has been very pleased with what he has seen in junior college transfer Scotty Phillips and in freshman Isaiah Woolard, a two-time signee with Ole Miss because he was asked a gray shirt during the 2017 season. So he signed again in 18, and he's there. He's been going through spring drills. Those two guys, similar in styles, not huge backs, but some good elusiveness between the tackles. I think Phillips a little more shiftiness there than Woolard. But anyway, they both had good springs, and they're going to be critical to the running back position. How critical will be determined really by the rehab for Devon Penniman. I think if Penniman comes back healthy, I think he ultimately will be the starter next season. Eric Swinney ran with the ones most of spring, all of spring, but there were a lot of reps with the twos, a lot of reps for Phillips and Woolard, and those guys did good things and really caught the attention of Matt Luke and offensive coordinator Phil Longo. So Luke believes he's been able to build some depth at the position. The best thing that could happen for Ole Miss offensively is for Penniman to regain his health and regain the form that he showed at the end of last year. Neither Penniman nor Swinney could really lock down that number 2 running back position last year behind Jordan Wilkins. Wilkins went on and became a 1,000-yard rusher, getting the last 100 there in the Egg Bowl. But Logan, in the SEC, you've got to have multiple running backs because they take a beating. It's hard for those guys to stay healthy. Neither Penniman nor Swinney last year could really lock down on that number 2 spot. They kind of alternated. However, it was Penniman who had it at the end of the season, and he had his best games back-to-back against Kentucky and Louisiana Lafayette before he got hurt against Texas A&M. He was showing strength and power and yards after contact, and looked like he was coming into his own when he was finished abruptly. So we'll see. If he regains his form, I think you'll see him as the number 1 back. That would benefit Ole Miss, specifically if these guys, Phillips and Woolard, could start out as backups and just really not have the pressure of being that starting back. But, here's the thing. You have an example on this team right now, Eric Swinney, of someone who so far has been unable to come back from major injuries. Now, he's had 2 injuries, plural, unlike this one dislocated knee that Penniman is dealing with right now. But Swinney has not been able to come back and show the form that he did in the spring of 2016 when there were such high hopes for him. Then he gets in the game there in the opener in 2016 on the neutral side, in Orlando against Florida State. And on his first carry, tears an ACL. It's been a long road back for Swinney. He's been mildly effective, but has not shown the ability that he did before that second injury. Before that, he was dealing with a stress fracture in his foot that he had to work through, and an injury that really caused him to redshirt as a freshman in 2015. So the running backs picture, we'll see how that evolves moving forward. A lot of that will depend on Devon Penniman. The other thing about Penniman, he's far and away the biggest back that Ole Miss has, coming in at 5'11", 238. The other guys are all in that 250, 215 or 205 range. Some similarities there. But, there has been some depth at running back in the spring, and Matt Luke has been pleased with that.
Yeah, for Mississippi State, they're 6 practices into the spring right now. They got started a little later than that. Joe Moorhead actually started 2 weeks later than Dan Mullen was scheduled to start spring. So, they've about halfway through with spring practice now. They'll have practice number 7 this afternoon. I've been able to watch 3 of those practices, Parrish, and portions of those 3 practices. The latter half of practices are closed when they actually get together and start doing a lot of the team stuff. But, Saturday is going to be a big day for Mississippi State. It's actually going to be their first team scrimmage, and that is actually open to the media. It's not open to the public, but Joe Moorhead is going to open it up to the media. And he's going to open up all the scrimmages to the media, which is something that Dan Mullen didn't do last year. So I'll be able to get a better gauge of where this team is, when they start scrimmaging against each other. But, from what I've been able to see so far, I've been really surprised at where Nick Fitzgerald is as far as his rehab. I did not expect him to be doing the things that he's doing out there right now. He's running around, and they've got a yellow jersey on him. They're protecting him. There's no contact there at all, but he's running through all the plays. And, I just thought he might be standing back there in the pocket and slinging it around a little bit, just kind of being stationary back there. But he's not. He's running through the plays. He's running the read options and all that kind of stuff. And, he's competing with Keaton Thompson right there, who finished the season really strong in that bowl game. I don't think there's going to be a quarterback competition there, but, both those guys are learning a brand new offense, and Keaton's got some talent. So it may be a situation where they play both of those guys. We'll have to just kind of see where things stand come August when Nick Fitzgerald's fully cleared. But, I'm impressed with him. The offense is really similar to what Dan Mullen ran, except they seem like they're throwing the ball downfield more than what I saw with Mullen. Mullen was a lot of short bubble screens and that kind of stuff. They're chunking it down the field right now, and that's something that's new to kind of see. They're involving the tight end a lot more, and that's kind of what Joe Moorhead's offense was known for there at Penn State, was getting the tight end involved, and they're doing that here at Mississippi State. And on the other side of the ball, the defense, they're switching from a 3-4 to a 4-2-5 defense. So a brand new style of defense. I'll have to see how that does. Mississippi State's defensive line is absolutely loaded. I mean, they have got just boo-koodles of defensive linemen, top quality defensive linemen that they can run through there. They've got some of those guys eligible that were JUCO transfers last year that redshirted. And, Chauncey Rivers from EMCC, Lee Autry from ICC, big time prospects that didn't play last year. So they're going to roll those guys through and mix them in with the Jeffrey Simmons and Fletcher Adams and those kind of guys, Corey Thomas. And, they should be really good on the front end and really good on the back end. They've got a lot of experience coming back in the secondary as well, getting some JUCO guys back, like former Michigan player Brian Cole back there at safety. He's going to be kind of that nickel back for Mississippi State as well. So, they've got a lot of returning players on both sides of the ball, and I'm interested to see Saturday just kind of where those guys are when they start scrimmaging against each other. They look good in individual periods, Parrish, but I want to see them actually go against one another and have some contact and see how they do.
Well, Logan, the 4-2-5 defense, that's not a brand new defense at Mississippi State. That's the Jolie Dunn defense at Mississippi State. So
I don't think those players were even born when Joe Lee Dunn was coaching that defense, though. So it's new to them. It's not new to Mississippi State.
Hey, let's talk baseball a little bit. The Rebels and Bulldogs are getting underway Friday. First pitch is 6:30, so that's the series this weekend. Logan, there are similarities right now. That long way to go. I'm not saying at this point that this Ole Miss season is going to end in Omaha, but there are a lot of similarities between this team and the 2014 team that did go to Omaha and win a couple of games for Ole Miss, finished fourth there when everything was said and done. The big thing in 2014, Logan, was that was such a better team offensively than 2013. They hit about 30 points higher, 25, 30 points higher. They had guys who were just okay in 2013 that took big jumps in 2014, specifically Will Allen, who hit 100 points higher in 2014 than he did in 2013. Austin Bousfield and Sykes Orvis made similar jumps. Orvis's power numbers really increased in 2014, his junior season. And we're seeing the same big jumps right now on offense for Ole Miss, a team that hit just 253 last year. It was really a struggle to watch these guys try to get around the bases last year, and ultimately that inconsistency on offense helped keep them out of the NCAA tournament. Now, after last night's 12-0 win at Memphis, 13 hits for the Rebels in that game. Excuse me, they're hitting 300 as a team. So the team average is up almost 50 points. And again, you're seeing guys who struggled last year: Thomas Dillard, Cole Zabowski, Chase Cockrell, Gray Kessinger, all of these guys with huge gains and increases in their production right now. So that's been a big key. We thought this team would be good on the mound. They've been good. They've been vulnerable at times. They had to hang on to win the Arkansas series. They had leads of 8-2 and 11-6, and Arkansas just kept coming and coming and coming. And Ole Miss finally was able to get the final outs with Parker Caracci and win that game 3 on last Saturday, 11-10. So that pitching staff has been vulnerable at times. The starters didn't go as deep into games as they needed to at Texas A&M, but still the Rebels were able to win that series. They were able to win the Arkansas series. So similarities. This team has that 2014 look about it. Still a lot of baseball to be played. We'll see how the season goes along. But tell me about State and what you see this weekend. Obviously, this has been a Bulldogs team that has not been able to score runs easily.
No, and you're right. And that's one of the things that has been the problem this year is they haven't had those guys make that offensive jump like Ole Miss has. You know, they were hoping that a Hunter Van Zyl and Elijah McNamee would be able to make that jump and provide this lineup with some power, and it just hasn't happened. They're relying on a lot of freshmen in the lineup, and you know, Parrish, when you get into the SEC, especially the SEC portion of the schedule, you know, those freshmen look like freshmen at times, and that's kind of where Mississippi State's at right now. They were hoping Marshall Gilbert came in and put up the same type of numbers that he did at junior college. He has not done that. In fact, he's just now, he hasn't even been a full-time starter behind the plate. They really have, you know, can't get either one of those catchers to really hit very well right now. And it's just kind of, the offense is just a mess. I mean, you've got Jake Mangum at the top of the lineup, who's their only 300 hitter, and he's still doing what Jake Mangum does is, you know, he gets on base and he's not getting home because they can't find anybody to get him home. But, you know, it's a struggle every time offensively. State pitches it actually pretty well. You know, Connor Pilkington has a low ERA. He has a great strikeout to walk ratio. And he's got a terrible win-loss record, you know, because he has to be nearly perfect for Mississippi State to win a ball game. He's lost a lot of one-run games and that kind of thing. You know, Ethan Small was really good this past weekend at LSU. He actually pitched the only game that they won in Baton Rouge last weekend, so we'll have to see how he rebounds from that. He's a sophomore left-hander that's their Saturday starter. He's coming back off of Tommy John surgery a year ago. And then Jacob Billingsley, a fifth-year senior, is their Sunday starter. He's been up and down all season. He's had some terrible starts where he didn't even record an out, and he's came back and had some pretty good starts. So, really it's kind of been a mixed bag with him. You don't know what you're going to get from one start to the next with him, but they've been pretty good in that Friday, Saturday role. But like I said, they're not getting a whole lot of run support. So, they're not winning a lot of those games because they can't score any runs, and their defense is not very good.
Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We thank you for clicking in with us today. Be sure to check out the memo, our news podcast every Thursday. Be sure to check out Prep Rally for all your high school sports needs. That's every Wednesday. And Logan and I will be back with you next week for another round of Double Coverage.